The Canadian real estate market is
Kind of a weird, special,
anxious, crazy,
normal real estate market.
Well, truthfully, it depends on what market you're in, because different markets have responded differently to the rising interest rates of the last year, and some are starting to show signs of life as the Bank of Canada pauses its interest rate increases. And last month, according to the Canadian Real Estate Association, sales increased on a month-over-month basis by 2.3%, and we saw the smallest decline in prices that we've seen since February of last year. So this has some commentators calling this the bottom of the market. But whether it's actually the bottom of the market largely depends on the market that you're in, and a lot of other factors with respect to jobs, net migration, and the local economies that make up this very large country of Canada. And in this Canadian real estate update for March of 2023, I've enlisted 6 of the best real estate YouTubers in the country. We're going to cover from the very far west to the very far east coasts of Canada and everything in between, so that you can get a feel for not only what's happening nationally, which, by the way, just so you know, the numbers nationally are largely affected by what's happening in BC and Ontario, but also so that you can understand what's happening in your individual markets. So once you're done watching this video, make sure you check out the description below, which has the links to all the other videos of the other real estate experts that have also done videos this month in order to make sure you're informed on what's going on in your market. And if you've got a local YouTuber that wasn't included, put their name down in the comment section below so that we can get them included in the next month's video. Oh, and before I get to all the national details, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Nolan Matthias, and if you want to thrive financially, this is the place for you. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And just because I haven't turned off the website yet, I'm going to offer you the one last chance to get my new book, Mortgage Secrets, totally for free. All you have to do is pay shipping and handling. Just go to mortgagesecrets.ca to get yours. Okay, so let's discuss the Canadian real estate market, because this is becoming the story of what's happening in a few markets, is dictating what the national statistics are looking like on a monthly basis. And that's why I enlisted a whole bunch of other YouTubers, like I mentioned, in order to make individual market videos so you can understand what's going on in your market. But from a national level, it's really interesting because it seems like sales are picking up, and it seems like the national declines in housing prices are starting to slow down. And this is largely due to the Bank of Canada slowing down their interest rate increases, taking that pause, and people starting to feel a little bit more comfortable about jumping back into the market. Now, that can be a good thing and a bad thing, primarily because if we get too comfortable with these rate pauses, it could lead to higher interest rates down the road. And some of my favorite economists are saying right now that they're no longer expecting rate declines between now and the end of 2023, but they're actually expecting that there could be further rate increases. Now, obviously, this comes on the heels of what's happening in the US with the 3 big banks that failed down there and other banking institutions worldwide that are also facing difficulties, which is putting downward pressure on fixed rates because of the downward pressure on the bond yields. So at this point, depending on how that all plays out and the financial instability that has been caused by the higher interest rates, well, that will very much dictate where interest rates will go between now and the end of the year. And if interest rates start to trend lower, you can probably expect that Canadian real estate prices are going to go up again. Because the one thing that seems to be propping up the Canadian real estate market is that migration into Canada and the fact that we are not building as many homes as we need for the future. So what I want to do is I want to jump you in. I want to show you the release from the Canadian Real Estate Association. I'm going to show you the national pricing map as well. And then I'm going to show you the amount that housing prices are down off of their peaks in March. So like I said, let's jump in real quick here and take a look at the actual release. Here's the highlights. National home sales rose by 2.3% month over month. So in other words, there were more home sales in February than there were in January. That's a good thing as we trend into a spring market, at least if you're one of those people who wants to see home prices stabilize. If you're one of those who wants to see them crash, well, this isn't a good thing for you. Now, actual not seasonally adjusted monthly activity came in 40% below February of 2022. This is no surprise as people rushed into the market in February of 2022 trying to beat the higher interest rates. Now, the number of newly listed properties dropped by 7.9% month over month. That is also a good thing for stabilizing house prices and a bad thing for those of you who want to see the prices crash. And then the MLS home price index edged down 1.1% month over month and was down 15.8% year over year. And the significance here is that it was only down 1.1% month over month. This is the smallest month-to-month decline that we've seen since February of last year. Now, I'll show you a couple of the graphs here real quick so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on in the market. So first and foremost, the residential sales activity data. This is where you see that small bump up in sales activity compared to last month. Residential new listings continue to trend down. That will play a supporting role in house price stabilization. As the number of listings continues to decline, or if it doesn't start to increase significantly, that will have upward pressure on housing prices. Now, again, this is largely dependent on the market that you're in. Some markets are going to see declining listings, some markets are going to see increasing listings, and what's happening in your individual market will dictate what's happening with the real estate prices there. Then looking at residential market balance, obviously this red line, we want to see it somewhere in the middle here. And that balance seems to be coming back from its lows in the middle of last year. And if you take a look at the residential real estate prices in Canada, the blue line being the composite benchmark, that is the most reliable data that we have for home prices with respect to where they're heading. But you can see actually that home prices on an average are increasing a little bit. And this is probably something to do with the BC and the Ontario market stabilizing. It could also be something to do with other markets that are seeing price growth. And then taking a look at residential average price year over year, what's interesting to note here is that Newfoundland and PEI have seen positive growth since February of last year. Alberta seems to be down a little bit over 10%. Now, what you'll see is Calgary isn't down quite that much, so other areas of Alberta are certainly down more. Saskatchewan's faring pretty well throughout this entire period of time. And as you can see, Ontario and BC are the two real estate markets that are typically weighing down the national averages. So what's happening in BC and Ontario tends to tell the story of what happens with respect to these national numbers. Now, I want to show you what's happening with respect to the prices versus the peak of the market. Now, these are numbers that were put together by Dr. Sherry Cooper, who is the chief economist for the Dominion Lending Centers Group and is the former chief economist for the Bank of Montreal. And what's interesting to note here is the Greater Toronto Area has seen a 22% decline off of the highs of March of last year. Canada as a whole has seen about a 19.4% decline, so you can see Toronto typically weighs on those numbers pretty heavily. Ottawa has seen a 17% decline, Greater Vancouver 17% decline. And then what's interesting is when you get into places like Halifax, which is included in that list of YouTubers who have also done videos on their markets, which will be in the description below, well, you can start to see that their numbers have been down fairly insignificantly, and Calgary's numbers are actually up slightly compared to last year. Now, one of my favorite tools from the Canadian Real Estate Association is the National Home Price Map. And I'm going to run you through this from West Coast to East Coast because the numbers here are really interesting. If you start to take a look at British Columbia, current home values are in the $940,000 range. Now, keep in mind, this is for the entire province, and there are certain pockets of the market that will have higher prices and certain parts of the market that will have lower prices. Then as you start to get into Alberta, you can see that the numbers are around $427,000. Into Saskatchewan, around $317,000. Now look at this. These are fairly similar numbers between 2023 and 2022. Then as you get into Manitoba, we're around $324,000 as an average price. In Ontario, we're looking at $865,000. This is down quite significantly from last year. Again, if you look at the Ontario and the BC numbers, they were both over $1 million in February of last year. Now they're both well under $1 million. Then getting into Quebec, $458,000. They fared pretty well considering that the housing prices were about $488,000 this time last year. Then Newfoundland and Labrador, $276,000. This is actually up compared to last year. Nova Scotia prices are up $369,000. New Brunswick is down just slightly at $266,000. And Prince Edward Island is up probably more than any other province in the country at $341,000. So the story here is that it seems that with the pause from the Bank of Canada, real estate in Canada is regrouping. Now, how long it'll regroup for and how much stabilization we see in housing prices is anybody's guess. And if we see major crises in the financial system, which seem to be the news headlines of the day right now, well, that could come back and cause greater problems in the Canadian real estate market. Or if that settles out and nothing else of significance happens in the interest rate world, well, we could see this be the turning point for Canadian real estate. And with immigration and stabilized interest rates, that would provide a pretty high level of support, especially when you include current job numbers to that Canadian real estate market. And we could see this be the beginning of the turning or at least a stabilization. But the key thing here is trying to time the market is a fool's errand. So I don't suggest that you look at the numbers here and go, now's my time to buy because housing prices are stabilizing, we've hit the bottom. No, you need to make your buying decisions based on whether it's the right time for you and whether the market's going up or the market's going down. If you buy when the time is right for you, you'll never have to worry about a decline or a rapid increase in prices because you'll have bought a property you can live in for the long term and that you will be able to afford no matter what happens with interest rates, your job, or anything else. So that's your national housing market update. Make sure you check out the updates from my 6 buddies. We've got Steve Karish covering the BC market and specifically Surrey. We've got Brad McCallum covering Calgary. We've got Trevor Tardif covering Edmonton. We've got Tom Story covering Toronto. We've got Peter Tulin covering Ottawa. And last but not least, Andrew Stevens, who's covering the Halifax market. So make sure you check out all of those videos. And even if you aren't interested in some of those specific markets, it's always interesting to see what's going on in those markets to compare what's going on relative to your own. And if you want to know more about what's happening with interest rates, make sure you check out this video right here.